something disturbing just surfaced. Dr. Travis Taylor, the lead scientist on The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, broke his silence about a classified episode that was filmed but never aired. For 3 years, fans noticed a gap in Season 2. Episode 7 was skipped entirely, jumping from Episode 6 directly to Episode 8 with no explanation. The network claimed scheduling conflicts. Production logs listed it as postponed indefinitely, but crew members who were there that night tell a different story. And now, Travis Taylor has finally explained why the footage was locked away, why the Pentagon got involved, and why he'll never set foot in that specific location on the ranch again. This isn't about UFOs or strange lights anymore. This is about something that affected the team's perception of reality itself, something that, according to Travis, broke the fundamental rules of how time and consciousness are supposed to work. Before we dive deeper, subscribe now if you're fascinated by the unexplained, because what follows may change how you view everything that happens at Skinwalker Ranch. When Season 2 began airing in 2021, eagle-eyed fans immediately noticed something odd. The episode guide listed 10 episodes, but only 9 aired. Episode 7 was completely missing from all streaming platforms, DVD releases, and international broadcasts. The gap was so clean, so surgical, that casual viewers didn't even notice. But hardcore fans did. They pulled production schedules, cross-referenced behind-the-scenes photos, and found evidence that Episode 7 had been filmed. Social media posts from crew members in late 2020 referenced the Mesa experiment, a nighttime investigation at a specific location on the ranch that witnesses described as the most intense night we've ever had. Then, suddenly, all references vanished. Posts were deleted. Photos were scrubbed. When fans asked the official Skinwalker Ranch social media accounts about the missing episode, responses were identical and robotic. All available episodes are currently streaming. Travis Taylor himself appeared on a podcast in early 2021, looking visibly exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, voice hoarse, hands trembling slightly when he held his coffee cup. When the host casually asked about the season, Travis paused for an unnaturally long time, nearly 15 seconds of dead air, before saying, "We can't talk about everything we encounter out there. Some things require clearance levels we don't have." The host laughed, thinking it was a joke. Travis didn't laugh back. Instead, he looked directly into the camera and said something that sent chills through viewers. If you experience something that challenges the fundamental nature of causality itself, how do you even explain it? How do you show it to people without... He trailed off, never finishing the sentence. That clip circulated on Reddit for weeks before it too disappeared, pulled by the network for copyright reasons. But not before hundreds of people downloaded it, preserving Travis's haunted expression and that unfinished warning. Then came the leaks. Anonymous sources claiming to be production assistants posted fragmented accounts on paranormal forums. They described an investigation that started normally, but descended into something none of them could rationally explain. Equipment malfunctions were expected at Skinwalker Ranch. Strange lights, weird sounds, electromagnetic anomalies. That was all par for the course. But this was different. According to these accounts, the team's perception of time became unstable. Events happened out of sequence. People remembered conversations that hadn't occurred yet, and the footage, the raw footage that only a handful of people have seen, allegedly shows something that shouldn't be possible to record on a linear timeline. One leaked message, later verified to have come from someone with production credentials, read, "Travis kept checking his watch and insisting we'd been out there for 20 minutes. The camera timestamp showed 3 hours. When we checked our phones, some showed 9 p.m., others showed 2 a.m., but we were all standing in the same location. That's when Brandon ordered everything shut down." Brandon Fugel, the ranch owner, reportedly made an emergency call to his Pentagon contacts that same night. Within 48 hours, 2 men in civilian clothing arrived at the ranch with non-disclosure agreements and portable hard drives. They left with every piece of footage from that investigation. The episode was classified, not just banned, classified under a designation that several sources claim relates to temporal anomaly documentation. And for 3 years, Travis Taylor said nothing about it until now. The location where Episode 7 was filmed is known to the team as the Shelf, a flat, elevated section of land on the eastern side of the property, overlooking a deep ravine. Indigenous tribes in the area have avoided this spot for generations, calling it the place where time breaks. Early Spanish explorers documented strange experiences near the Shelf, describing instances where travelers claim to have walked the same path multiple times despite moving forward or arriving at destinations before they had departed. Modern surveyors in the 1970s abandoned mapping the area after GPS equipment began showing their position in multiple locations simultaneously. When the Skinwalker Ranch team decided to investigate the Shelf in October 2020, they knew its reputation. But Travis, ever the scientist, wanted hard data. He brought equipment specifically designed to measure temporal displacement, atomic clocks synchronized to GPS satellites, multiple cameras with hardwired timestamps, and sensors that could detect if local time moved at a different rate than the surrounding area. The experiment was simple in concept. Spend 6 hours on the shelf, running tests, measuring everything, and documenting any anomaly. They brought enough battery power for 12 hours just in case. What they didn't prepare for was the possibility that 6 hours might not mean the same thing in that location. According to Travis's recent statement, delivered in a private interview that was leaked against his wishes, the problems began before they even reached the shelf. We started hiking up at exactly 6:47 p.m., Travis explained, his voice carrying a weight that wasn't there in earlier seasons. I checked my watch multiple times. By the time we reached the top, it should have been around 7:15 p.m. But when we arrived, Dragon's watch said 9:22 p.m. Bryant's said 7:03 p.m. Mine said 6:52 p.m., 5 minutes before we had left. Initially, they assumed equipment malfunction. Watches could be wrong, but the camera timestamps were impossible to dismiss. 3 different cameras, all hardwired to internal clocks, all showing different times, and none of them matching what the team members remembered. That's when I knew we were dealing with something outside conventional physics, Travis said. You can't have 3 atomic clocks showing 3 different times in the same location unless space-time itself is fractured. They set up equipment anyway, determined to document whatever was causing the temporal distortion, and that's when things got worse. The cameras kept recording, but the footage showed events out of sequence. In one continuous shot, Travis is seen setting up a sensor array. In the next frame, the array is already complete and running. Then, 3 frames later, Travis is back to setting it up again, wearing different clothing than he had been wearing moments before. We thought the cameras were glitching, Travis explained, but when we reviewed the footage in real time on the monitors, we could see ourselves doing things we hadn't done yet. Not predictions, not premonitions, actual footage of future events playing in the present. Bryant Dragon Arnold, the ranch's security chief, reported seeing Travis walk past him toward the equipment while simultaneously watching Travis stand 15 feet away, talking into a radio. Both versions were solid, physical, real. When Dragon called out, both Travises turned to look at him. Dragon grabbed my arm, Travis recounted, his voice shaking slightly. He said, "Which one are you?" And I didn't know how to answer that question, because if he could see 2 of me, which one was actually me? Was I the one he was touching, or the one standing by the equipment? Or was I both, or neither? The team tried to leave. That's when they discovered the real problem. The path they had used to reach the shelf was gone. Not hidden, not blocked, gone. The terrain had changed. Where there had been a gentle slope, there was now a sheer drop. The landmarks they'd used to navigate, a distinctive rock formation, a dead tree, existed but in different positions, as if the landscape itself had been rearranged. We were trapped in a location that was geographically unstable, Travis said, not just temporally unstable. The actual physical space was shifting. We'd walk 50 feet north and end up south of where we started. We'd head downhill and find ourselves going uphill. The footage from this period, the footage that only a few people have seen, allegedly shows the team walking in straight lines but arriving back at their starting point from different directions. Paths that should have been impossible, geometry that violated Euclidean space, and then the duplicates appeared. We started seeing ourselves, Travis said, and for the first time in the interview, he looked directly at the camera with an expression of pure, unfiltered fear. Not reflection, not hallucinations, physical duplicates. I watched myself walk past me. I heard my own voice having a conversation I hadn't had yet, or maybe had already had and was going to have again. Time wasn't just broken, it was looping and overlapping and splitting. Dragon reported seeing himself standing motionless about 30 feet away, just staring back at him. The duplicate's mouth moved, speaking words that Dragon heard in his own mind rather than through his ears. "You're not supposed to see this. We're not supposed to overlap." When Dragon stepped toward his duplicate, both versions moved simultaneously, mirror images, perfectly synchronized, until they weren't. The duplicate moved its hand a fraction of a second before Dragon moved his. Then it smiled, an expression Dragon insists he wasn't making. "That's when I understood," Travis said quietly. "These weren't duplicates. They were us from different timelines, different moments, existing simultaneously in the same space. The shelf wasn't just bending time. It was collapsing multiple time streams into a single location." The team huddled together, trying to formulate an escape plan. But planning became impossible because cause and effect had broken down. They would decide on a course of action, then realize they had already attempted it and failed, or succeeded, or were currently in the middle of attempting it in another version of themselves they could see 50 feet away. Brandon was on the radio, Travis recalled, trying to coordinate with us from the command center, but he was hearing our voices before we spoke. He'd ask us a question, and we'd hear his question after we'd already answered it. The conversation was happening backward and forward at the same time. It was Thomas Winterton, the ranch's superintendent, who finally noticed the pattern. The temporal distortions were strongest near a specific rock formation at the center of the shelf. Every time someone approached it, time became more unstable. Every time they moved away from it, things stabilized slightly. Thomas theorized that something was buried there, Travis said. Or maybe something was trying to come through. He described it as a weak point in space-time, a place where the membrane between moments had worn thin. Against Travis's objections, Dragon approached the rock formation with a handheld sensor. The readings went insane. Electromagnetic spikes, gravitational fluctuations, radiation signatures that didn't match any known isotope. And then Dragon disappeared. Not vanished in a flash of light, not pulled into another dimension. He simply stopped existing in that moment. One frame he was there, the next frame he wasn't, but his shadow remained, cast by a light source that no longer had an object to create it. "We could hear him," Travis said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dragon was screaming, but the sound was coming from every direction and no direction. It was like he'd been scattered across multiple points in time, and we were hearing all of his screams simultaneously. Then, impossibly, Dragon was back, standing exactly where he'd been, but changed. His hair was longer. His clothes were weathered, as if he'd been wearing them for weeks. His watch showed a date 3 months in the future. Dragon said he'd been gone for 47 days, Travis explained. He described living in a version of the ranch where the rest of us didn't exist, where he was completely alone, trapped in a loop where every day was the same day repeating. But for us, he'd been gone for maybe 3 seconds. Dragon had something in his hand when he reappeared, a small object he claimed he'd found buried near the rock formation. He described it as wrong, something that shouldn't exist in a linear timeline. When he tried to show it to the others, they couldn't focus on it. Their eyes slid off it, unable to perceive its shape. That's when Brandon Fugel made the call to evacuate immediately. The team grabbed what equipment they could and fled the shelf, not caring about the unstable terrain, just desperate to escape. They made it down in what felt like 10 minutes. When they checked their watches, 6 hours had passed. When they checked the camera timestamps, some showed they'd been gone for 14 hours. Others showed 23 minutes. But the worst discovery came when they reviewed the footage later that night. In the background of several shots, visible in the distance on the shelf they'd just evacuated, were human figures. The team counted carefully. There were 7 figures. The team had only consisted of 5 people. The 2 extra figures wore the same clothing as Travis and Dragon, but when the team froze the frame and zoomed in, the duplicates' faces were blurred, distorted, like reality couldn't decide what they should look like. "Those weren't us," Travis said flatly. "Or maybe they were us from a timeline where we didn't leave. Maybe they're still up there, trapped in that temporal loop. Maybe we are. Maybe the versions of us that came down aren't the originals. How would we even know?" That question, how would we even know, haunted the team for weeks. Travis began experiencing what he described as temporal echoes, memories of events that hadn't happened yet, or had happened in a slightly different way. He'd remember conversations with specific words that, when they actually occurred, had different words. He'd recall entire days that nobody else remembered. Dragon refused to talk about his 47 days alone, but his wife reported that he'd wake up screaming about the loop and the ones who didn't make it out. He lost weight, not from lack of eating, but as if his body was still living through those 47 days simultaneously, burning calories in a timeline that no longer existed. The object Dragon brought back from the shelf was confiscated by the Pentagon contractors within hours. Travis never saw it again, but he described it in his statement. It looked like a rock, but its surface moved, not like water or liquid, like time itself was flowing across it. When I tried to pick it up, my hand aged. The skin wrinkled, the veins became more prominent, my fingernails grew. When I pulled my hand away, it returned to normal. That object existed in multiple states of decay and formation simultaneously. The raw footage from that night was seized and classified. The Pentagon representatives reportedly told Brandon Fugel that the investigation had documented a temporal anomaly consistent with theoretical models of space-time collapse, and that public distribution could cause widespread temporal perception disorder. What does that mean? According to leaked documents, analysts who reviewed the footage began experiencing their own temporal distortions. One analyst reported remembering reviewing the footage before it had been delivered to them. Another claimed they watched the same footage on 3 consecutive days, and each time, the events in the video occurred in a different order. The footage itself became temporally unstable, Travis explained in his statement, as if whatever was happening on the shelf infected the recording. People who watched it weren't just seeing what happened. They were experiencing the temporal distortion secondhand. Their perception of time became unreliable. That's when the decision was made at the highest level. Episode 7 would never air. The footage would be locked in a classified facility. The investigation would be struck from all public records, but Travis believes it's too late for complete containment. "Something came back with us from the shelf," he said, his eyes darting to the side as if checking for something just out of frame. "I don't mean a creature or an entity. I mean a pattern, a temporal instability that's spreading. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone and they'll respond to something I haven't said yet. Sometimes I'll walk into a room I've never been in and know exactly where everything is because I've already been there in a future I haven't lived yet." He paused, swallowing hard. "And sometimes, late at night, I see him, the other Travis, the one who stayed on the shelf. He's standing in my backyard or at the end of the hallway or in the reflection of my car window. He looks older, tired, like he's been living all the timelines simultaneously while I've only been living one." Travis ended his statement with a warning. "We opened something at Skinwalker Ranch that we don't know how to close. The shelf is still there, still active, still collapsing timelines into itself. And I can't prove this, but I think that every timeline that collapses creates another duplicate, another version of the people who were there that night. And those duplicates have to exist somewhere." He leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "If you ever go to Skinwalker Ranch, stay away from the eastern shelf. Don't let them convince you to go up there, because if you do, you might come back. But you'll never be sure if you're the same you that went up. And the version of you that didn't make it out, it'll still be up there, living every possible timeline, watching every version of itself, unable to die because it's trapped in a loop where death itself just restarts the sequence." The interview ended there. The video was posted to a fringe paranormal website and removed within hours, but not before thousands of people downloaded it. In the comments, dozens of viewers reported the same experience. While watching Travis's statement, they felt like they'd already watched it before. They remembered details that hadn't happened yet in the video. They anticipated his words before he spoke them. One commenter wrote, "I watched this video 3 times, but I only clicked play once. I don't know how to explain that. I remember watching it, then watching it again, then watching it a 3rd time, but my browser history only shows 1 view. Did I watch it 3 times in 3 different timelines? Am I remembering futures that haven't happened yet?" Another simply wrote, "I saw myself in the background of the video, behind Travis, through the window, but I've never been to his location. I've never met him. How could I be in the background? Unless..." Travis hasn't appeared publicly since that statement. His social media went dark. The secret of Skinwalker Ranch continued without addressing the missing episode, and production moved all investigations away from the eastern portion of the property. But last week, a hiker in Utah, nearly 50 miles from Skinwalker Ranch, posted a photo to social media. In the distance, standing on a rocky shelf, were 7 human figures. The hiker claimed there was nobody else on the trail that day, but in the photo, the figures were clearly visible. When the image was analyzed, facial recognition software identified 5 of the figures: Travis Taylor, Dragon, Thomas Winterton, and 2 other team members from that night. The other 2 figures had faces too blurred to identify, but they wore the same clothing as Travis and Dragon. The hiker added one final detail. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, completely still, like they were waiting for something. Or like they were stuck. I watched them for 10 minutes, and they didn't move once, not even to breathe. The question that haunts everyone who knows about Episode 7 is simple but terrifying. If the versions we see now, the Travis Taylor appearing on TV, the Dragon working security, the team continuing their investigations, are the ones who made it off the shelf, then who are the duplicates still standing there? And if we can't tell the difference, does it even matter? If this story disturbed you, subscribe and share this video. Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced time anomalies or felt like you've lived the same moment twice. And if you ever find yourself at Skinwalker Ranch, remember Travis's warning. Some investigations aren't worth the answers. Because sometimes the truth isn't that you found something strange. It's that something strange found you and decided to keep you in every timeline forever. And sometimes the scariest question isn't what happened. It's which version of me came back.